本動画は、公式がワールド・オブ・ワーシップスの仕組みを解説している How It Works という動画をつなぎ合わせてまとめたものになります。今しているのは、いわゆる決キャプの話です。視聴者が頭からキャプに突っ込んで促進している駆逐艦プレイヤーであれば、お尻から後進でキャプに入るという方法を考えてみてください。対空砲のオンオフの切り替えは PT。
If there's no way to avoid fighting enemy aviation, activate a priority AA sector
大きいで対空セクターを強化でき、ついでに対空砲の射程内に入っている航空機へ割合ダメージを与えられます。
And always take evasive actions, so it'll be harder for aircraft to hit you. What if your target is setting a smoke screen or is about to leave your spotting range?
シフトプラス X で砲塔を固定できます。
Press Shift plus X to lock the crosshair onto a single spot. You'll be able to fire at the spot where your opponent was last seen. But don't forget that shell dispersion increases twofold if no target has been locked onto. Hitting a target firing from behind the smoke screen is also possible by using spotting aircraft. As you remember, in this case, the ship's aiming view is changed. The camera gets higher, so you can take a vertical lead on your target more precisely. Now, take a look at the shell tracer coming from the smoke. A tracer starting point is pretty much where the main gun firing a shell is located.
ここでは着弾観測機を使っていますが、対潜水艦兵装である空襲を利用して俯瞰視点を得る方法もあります。
Come from the same spot, it means that the ship is stationary behind a smoke screen. Such a target is easier to hit. Remember though, that skilled players constantly move while hiding behind a smoke screen. In such cases, you need to think about target leads as well. Another method of firing at unseen targets is during a cyclone. That's when the minimap will come in handy. You can always see a small circle on it indicating the position of your reticle. With it, you can try aiming at an enemy inside a cyclone. There's a hint that will help you aim in such situations correctly. Pay attention to the circle on the minimap when the battle is played in usual weather conditions. By doing so, you'll memorize the correct lead you should take when firing at targets located at various ranges. So when a cyclone range is on the map, you'll be able to use this experience you've gained. When in the port, check out the penetration capability of your high explosive shells, especially for artillery destroyers and cruisers. It is also worth checking out the armor layout of your primary opponents. This will help you know what your ship is capable of in an artillery duel with high explosive shells and which part of the enemy hull you should aim for. Depending on a battle situation, switch shell types. Even while helming battleships, suppose a target exposes its side at the right angle, then fire armor-piercing shells at them. On the other hand, if a target acts cautiously and moves, pointing their bow toward you, or retreats, exposing their rear, it's time for high explosive shells.
So let's begin with the damage-inflicting mechanics and the structures of ships in our game.
We'll take upgraded Japanese battleship Fuso with 57,100 HP as an example.
ここから区画 HP と全体 HP の話になります。不装は表示上は57,100の HP となっていますが、内部的には17,100の HP が様々な区画に割り振られています。その17,100のうちどこからでもいいので合計57,100削り切れば不装は撃沈されるということです。
We divide a ship just into the bow and rear ends, a citadel, superstructure, and casemate. We add different values to each part of the ship. Fuso's bow end has 3,700 HP, rear end 3,400 HP, casemate 8,500 HP, and superstructure 1,500 HP.
Naval engineers tried to group warships as vital compartments such as the engine room or magazine at the center of the hull and protect them with as much armor as they possibly could. This part of a ship is called a citadel. We certainly need to reflect its importance in the game. If a ship's citadel is destroyed, she will no longer be able to fight. That's why we decided to allocate all of the ship's HP there, 57,100 HP for Fuso.
Now it's time for the most important part. We're going to introduce a special virtual part called the hull. Fuso's hull has 42,800 HP. The sum of all Fuso's parts is 117,000 HP, but the HP indicator shows 57,100 HP only.
This means that you need to inflict 57,100 damage to the ship in order to destroy her. The part of the ship you hit and damage doesn't matter. It only affects how quickly you can destroy the ship.
The layout isn't simple and looks odd at first glance. Let's try to figure out how it works using a specific example. Let's assume that a shell dealing exactly 3,000 damage is fired at our Fuso. The shell will inflict this amount of damage to the citadel only. If the shell hits any other less important parts of the ship, it will deal just 1/6 of its damage. For example, if the shell hits the bow end, the Japanese battleship will lose just 1,000 HP of her total amount.
1/6 of 3,000 is 500 HP. Why does the ship then lose 1,000 HP of her total amount? The thing is that when a shell hits the bow end, it damages this part for 500 HP and deals another 500 damage to the hull. However, a most interesting thing will happen after 8 shells hit Fuso's bow end, which, as we remember, has only 3,700 HP. Because of this, it will be destroyed and cease receiving damage.
After that, every shell that hits the bow end will damage the hull only. So each penetration will cause not 1,000 but just 500 damage. By the way, here's a tip for the game. A destroyed part of a ship becomes black. So you don't need to waste your shells on these parts.
Nevertheless, we can destroy the hull by firing just at the destroyed bow end. As a result, the battleship will lose 46,500 HP. If you continue to fire at the bow end after that, your shells will deal just 10% of their damage to the HP bar directly. It's clear that Fuso's rear end, casemate, superstructure and citadel are undamaged. Therefore, you can deal more damage to them, 1/6 of the shell's damage.
Now, let's assume that the shell hits the battleship's citadel. It won't deal any damage to the hull, but the citadel will receive 3,000 damage without any reductions applied. The issue of what part of a ship to fire at during battle depends on the specific battle conditions. But regardless of what part of Fuso you hit, you'll still need to deal exactly 57,100 damage to send the ship to the bottom.
ここから修理班の話になります。回復係数なる数値が出てきます。
And as we remember, another 1,500 to the entire hull. The battleship's HP reduced by 3,000. The damage dealt by each shell to each part will be multiplied by the restoration coefficient. It's 0.1 for the citadel and 0.5 for all the other parts. These coefficients are the same for the majority of ships in the game. The obtained numbers are accumulated in the restoration stack and wait there until you activate your repair party.
In fact, of all the damage received by your ship, you'll be able to restore only the HP in this stack. The rest is lost without any possibility to get it back.
砲弾によるダメージの半分は修理班で取り戻せますが、バイタルダメージは1割しか回復できないので、バイタルダメージをもらわないように気をつけようという話でした。
The amount of HP restored per second and its action time. Almost all ships, with some exceptions, restore 0.5% of their maximum HP per second. That's why if you install a hull, which has more HP, or use the survivability expert commander skill, which increases the maximum amount of HP restored per second by repair party. Its action time depends on the type and nation of the ship.
Repair Party restores 285 HP per second for Fuso's top hull. Its action time is 28 seconds. Accordingly, the Japanese battleship can return 7,980 points to its HP pool. If we enable Repair Party right away, we'll restore a mere 1,500 hit points from the stack. But that would mean that a potentially recoverable 6,480 HP from the repair party is lost. That's why it makes sense to absorb some more damage.
Let our Fuso burn a little, say for 7,000 HP. The restoration coefficient for fires and floods is 1. Accordingly, all 7,000 damage dealt by the fire will go into the restoration stack, and it contains 8,500 HP already.
火災と浸水、ラムによるダメージは修理班で全て取り戻せるという話です。
As you remember, the Japanese battleship restores 7,980 HP in 28 seconds. In the combat interface, this is displayed as a gray area in the ship's silhouette. That's the HP that will be restored by one use of Repair Party. The remaining 520 points stay in the restoration stack and wait for the next time you enable Repair Party.
Please note that first of all, a ship's parts get restored in proportion to the received damage, and then it's the turn of the points deducted directly from the HP pool. However, if the restoration stack has more points than the ship parts lost, like in our case, their HP will be restored completely. Even if a ship part lost all of its HP, it will be restored nevertheless.
Another interesting peculiarity of the restoration stack function is related to over-penetrations. As you remember from the previous episodes, the damage from them is inflicted directly to the HP bar, but the stack gets the damage multiplied by the coefficient of the ship part through which the shell flew.
For example, if our shell pierced the bow or superstructure and inflicted 900 damage, the stack will grow by 450 points. If a shell was able to overpenetrate Fuso Citadel and deal the same 900 damage, the stack would increase by only 90 points.
Restoration coefficients have their peculiarities as well. For example, it's 0.33 for citadels of tier 9 to 10 heavy cruisers. Neptune and Minotaur have a greater citadel restoration coefficient, 0.5. The ship's parts restoration coefficient for British battleships is 0.6. You can obtain detailed information on this topic from the corresponding article on the WoW's wiki.
Our old acquaintance,
ここではマッチングのメカニズムが語られています。覚えておきたいのは、対面に来る艦艇の艦首やチェアーだけでなく、国籍も揃えられる傾向にあるということです。アイオワで出撃するより出雲で出撃する方が対面に武蔵を召喚しやすいといった例でよく耳にする仕様ですね。
At the moment, we have 4 Soviet destroyers in one team and 4 Japanese destroyers in another. The matchmaker will distribute them evenly. If 3 out of 4 destroyers of the same nation were in a division, only the ship without a division would be moved. Of one of World of Warship's most important mechanics, the spotting system.
ここから最後まで、隠蔽の話になります。さすがにこれを知らずにプレイしている人はいないでしょうから、この先は見ていても得るものがないかもしれません。
Spot each other, the difference between detectability range and viewing range, and finally, you'll learn how Yamato can fire at Z52 while remaining unspotted.
Let's take a look at the minimap. You'll see several concentric circles displayed around your ship. To enable or disable them, press and hold Control in battle and click the gear icon located above the minimap. Today, we're interested in the one highlighted with a dotted line. This is your ship's detectability range.
Your ship is invisible to any opponents until at least one of them passes within your detectability range. The indicator, which will be displayed on your screen whenever your enemies see you, will notify you about this. As soon as the enemy leaves your detectability range, or after you put enough distance between you, your ship immediately becomes invisible to them again. The minimum time for your ship to be visible to your opponents is 2 seconds.
The base detectability range directly depends on the size of your ship. Let's replace one Yamato with destroyer Khabarovsk. The destroyer's detectability range is 10 kilometers. The distance between the ships is 18 kilometers. But while Khabarovsk will spot Yamato at this distance, the battleship will need to approach within 10 kilometers to see the destroyer. Without special consumables or upgrades, you can only spot the enemy ship when within her detectability range.
The question here is, what part of the ship needs to appear in the enemy's detectability range for the ship to be spotted? The answer to that is the detection point located at the center of every ship on the upper border of her highest armored item. This point performs two important functions. Firstly, it helps you spot and see the enemy. Secondly, it's the reason your enemy sees you.
During battle, the game server constantly checks the distance and availability of obstacles between the points on all ships. If there is an island between the point on your ship and the point on the enemy ship, you won't see each other, even if you are within each other's detectability ranges. You need to remember, though, that not every island can hide your ship. The detection point on battleships is usually positioned significantly higher than on destroyers.
Can you spot a ship hiding behind an island? Sure. In World of Warships, there is a 2-kilometer range of assured acquisition of enemy ships. With this distance between the detection points on your ships, you will be visible to each other regardless of any obstacles between you. In that case, the indicator will look like this. However, there are often situations in the game where you might be out of an enemy ship's detectability range, but you can still see her. This means the ship has been spotted by one of your allies, who is passing over the information about her to your team. That's how allied spotting works.
When an enemy ship is spotted by your ally, her icon appears on the mini-map. But you won't always see her in the binoculars. The thing is that every ship has a viewing range. The grey sector on the minimap displays the viewing angle of your camera.
指定の話です。
Its furthest border represents the end of your viewing range. Under no circumstances will you see any ships located beyond that border.
The viewing range is a value assigned individually to every ship in the game. It's affected by many factors, but is primarily influenced by the height at which your ship's rangefinder is positioned.
以上です。